Satan, demonio, dinaja.
Welcome, everyone, to Satan and Coffee. It does seem like what we're going to be doing is Wednesdays and Fridays and Sundays. It just feels better. So I think this is the schedule that we're going to stick with. Good morning, Maeve. Good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Greatly appreciate it. As you can see, new logo. Spent the weekend kind of working on, the setup and how it looks. Also, new overlay. So hopefully y'all like it. Y'all enjoy it. Hopefully it looks good for you. So today, the most abused tool of religion. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about exorcism. It's actually something that I have lined up for a client. Is we're going to be talking about exorcism and how how religion kind of turns it into a tool for control, right? So they say the devil causes possession, but it was the priests who weaponized it. They say Lucifer is the enemy. But when the mind fractures and the shadows scream, it is he who brings the light. Welcome to Satan and Coffee, where exorcism meets truth, and we burn what doesn't belong. So let's start with a short history of exorcism, shall we? So exorcism in Abrahamic religions began as ritual theater, often used to reinforce faith and obedience. Catholic exorcism, Duale Romanum, 1614, was designed not for healing, but for domination of the possessed by the church's authority. Countless mental illnesses, schizophrenia, epilepsy, dissociative identity disorder, were falsely treated as demonic possession. Witch burnings, forced baptisms, and death by exorcism. Cases be Annalise Michel, Roland Doe, are historical tragedies created by misdiagnosis and blind faith. Right? It is spiritual cleansing. Is it spiritual cleansing or just ritualized abuse? That's what we're going to kind of look into, right? Because I do think that exorcism is a rite that exists. I do believe that at times exorcism is necessary. But I think there's a lot of fluff surrounding it that needs to be hashed out and kind of set to the wayside. I hope you all got your coffee. I know I got mine. We all know Satan likes coffee. So, with this first segment that we're talking about, right, this history of it. So, the origins in ritual theater and indoctrination, right? Mesopotamia and ancient roots. So, long before Christianity, cultures used spiritual cleansing rituals to expel demons, often symbolic representations of disease, trauma, or fate. Babylonian texts reference Asaku, spirits. Egyptian priests used ritual purification. These were protective, not oppressive. Jewish tradition. Ancient Jewish beliefs didn't include possession as we think of it today, but by the 1st century, during Roman occupation, demonology crept into Jewish thought. The Book of Tobit and Dead Sea Scrolls include early references to evil spirits requiring ritual removal. Okay, so it kind of started right around there. Early Christianity borrowed these ideas and amplified them. Jesus is portrayed in the Gospels as casting out demons, a symbolic power move over paganism and illness alike. It wasn't about spiritual healing. It was a show of divine authority in hostile territory, right? Exorcism became holy theater, right? Performed not for the possessed, but for the audience. And this kind of equates and continues and moves forward throughout history. And we're going to get into some other stuff, and we're going to talk about the Warrens as well, and how they just kind of perpetuated the shit out of it, right? So codification through the Catholic Church, the Rituale Romanum, 1614. The Rituale Romanum, published under Pope Paul V, solidified exorcism as a strictly Catholic act of authority. This could be a whole episode. Yeah, they could. Yeah, they could. Right? It outlined prayer, Latin invocations, and the command structure, priest versus demon. It wasn't collaborative or therapeutic. It was military-grade spiritual warfare. No concern for the individual's psychological state. This was a divine interrogation backed by threats, relics, and guilt. And if it failed, blame the victim for lack of faith. The demon didn't leave because the soul was too sinful. Let's try again, harder this time, right? It is kind of like the mentality that these people took with it. And we're going to get into, like, the beginning of this episode is going to be more historical kind of ideas and, research I've done on this. And then we're going to get into how you can use the demonic for exorcisms. And I know that sounds contradictory, but at least if you have, like, an Abrahamic state of mind, it sounds contradictory, but it's not. Okay. The victims of misdiagnosis, mental illness misread as demonic possession, epilepsy, ancient terms, sacred disease, often interpreted as possession due to seizures and blackouts. Schizophrenia, seen as voices, delusions equal demons speaking through the vessel. Dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder, mistaken as many demons inside someone, right? PTSD and even autism spectrum behaviors were regularly interpreted as signs of the devil. Like basically anything that made you, like, neurodivergent, like, would, you were possessed, right? So real world victims. Wow, words. So Anneliese Michel, 1952 to 1976, German woman subjected to 67 Catholic exorcisms, right? Suffered epilepsy and psychosis, was denied medical treatment, starved to death, and died at age 23. Parents and priests were charged with negligent homicide. Her recordings and case were later twisted into a horror film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And this is another problem that we have with exorcism in society, is we sensationalize it. And we sensationalize it inaccurately and focus on what people want to believe an exorcism includes, or what it's about, or what it's for, instead of actually focusing on the reality of it, or at least in most cases, the reality of it. Another real-world victim is Ronald Doe, 1949. Teenage boy from Maryland, possessed after using a Ouija board. Received multiple exorcisms by Catholic priests. The events were dramatized into The Exorcist, the film that kicked off the cultural obsession with possession. Right? We glorify the incorrect parts. Exactly, Maeve. Exactly. We glorify the incorrect parts of exorcism. And again, I want to reiterate this point. It's not that I don't believe that exorcism isn't needed at times, or that it's not a real thing. I do believe it is. I just believe that through an Abrahamic lens, it has been diluted, manipulated, and then amplified in the wrong ways to scare the shit out of people that if they don't go to church enough, that, you know, you're going to get possessed by a demon. And the funny thing is, though, is like that's the line, right? Like if you don't go to church enough, if you're not faithful enough, if you don't believe in God enough, then you open yourself and your home to these things. Then why is it the most religious people out there are the ones that get possessed? And for me, I mean, that right there is, just a point of, contention to say that it's more so psychological disorder than anything else. That these people are so religious, that they are so caught up in their religion that they basically put themselves into a state of psychosis and believe that they are possessed and need an exorcism. It prompts me to watch a movie, to watch a piece of fiction. Right? Exactly. So, witch burnings enforced baptisms as exorcism of culture. So, during the Inquisition, exorcism was performed on witches, not to cleanse demons, but to erase paganism, female power, and rebellion. Forced exorcisms during colonization were aimed at non-Christians, especially indigenous peoples, to break cultural and spiritual identity. Exorcism wasn't just personal, it was political, patriarchal, and cultural genocide. And I wrote the words, guys. Like, I mean, I'm definitely, not a leftist, but this is just truth. This is just truth, right? It just is what it is, right? For the time period, right? It was patriarchal. It was cultural genocide. It was political. It was what it was. And there is no making excuses for it. There's no skirting around it. Is what all of these things were. Like the point of, the witch burnings and the forced baptisms and exorcisms and things like that, during that time period. It was just control, religion. I mean, the thing was, if you think about it, I mean, definitely a power dynamic. Yeah, most definitely. Religion has been so incorporated into politics over the years that some of the worst atrocities in the world have been committed in the name of God, right? I mean, God gave permission. I mean, even in England's not innocent of it. Their history is ripe with this shit, and so is ours. So, sorry, I like my coffee. Doing a nice little hazelnut blend this morning. Right? So, with all of that, right? How much of what we call possession today is misunderstood trauma, grief, or illness? Do we believe any of these historical practices ever serve the person in question, or only the system around them? What should modern spiritual exorcism require to avoid these same problems, these same conflicts, right? What should be included or excluded to avoid these types of things? Because again, I'm not speaking out against exorcism. I believe that exorcisms, there are times where exorcism is necessary. But the thing is like, I mean, I've seen videos of people that like claim to be possessed, and it follows a Hollywood movie, right? It's a psychological issue that I think, unfortunately, I mean, I do believe that like the peak of it is past, but I do believe that there are a lot of people out there that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, larger than themselves, something they want to be, more important, or feel more important rather. And so, they fall into this, and then they look at, like, the what we understand or know as, the criteria for the church to be identified as, possessed. And then you see people, like, I've seen videos of people on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, things like that, claiming to be possessed, or, someone recording them claiming that they are possessed. And I feel like I'm just watching, a fucking, a mini version of The Exorcist. How much do I feel in part that it's related to education? I think there's a big part of that. Because the thing is like, so first and foremost, when you understand psychological problems, and, like, not necessarily in the scope of being a psychiatrist or a therapist or, a psychologist, but when you understand mental illness, you understand that mental illness exists, and you understand how some mental illness presents, then, it's a little bit easier to kind of focus on the psychology of it rather than the spirituality of it. Now, here's the issue, though. So I think we're running into the same problem with, hold on a second, let me fix my focal point. There we go. We're running into the same problem with mental illness, right? And it's more readily available. People are doing the same thing with mental illness. Like, this is the thing. This is a problem in society that needs to be addressed. Okay, because back in the 1600s, the 1500s, and so on and so forth, we get people that, are acting like they're possessed. I mean, even today, we get people that are acting like they're possessed, for attention purposes or for clicks and views and shit like that, and now we have the same problem with psychology because everybody and their fucking grandmother has borderline personality disorder. Right? And that's the big one. That's the big, I have never seen in the history of my life, I've been here for 39 years, have I ever seen so many fucking people with borderline personality disorder. And the thing is it fits into the trope of the victim mentality. And you guys know how I feel about the fucking victim mentality. I hate that shit, right? But it fits into the trope of the victim mentality, because the thing is bipolar disorder is something that you can't help, right? It's a chemical imbalance and it just happens. Bipolar disorder, however, presents very similarly, borderline personality disorder, presents very similarly to borderline, to bipolar, but it's caused by trauma. So it fits into the victim mentality. So everybody and their fucking grandmother has borderline personality disorder. And there are people that will read and read and read and read about the diagnostic criteria for this shit. Because all you have to do is go to a psychiatrist, tell them that you have this pervasive pattern. You can lie to a psychiatrist, tell them that you have this pervasive pattern that you've done, and you can get official diagnosis. It's not that fucking hard. They don't lock you in a ward and watch you to verify whether or not you have this shit. It's based off of what you say. Now, do I believe that there are people out there that have borderline personality disorder? Of course, I believe there are people out there that have borderline personality disorder. But I also believe that psychiatrists are doling this fucking, diagnosis out like fucking candy. And so we're running into the same problem with mental health that we ran into with exorcism back in the day. People so desperate for something that they want these labels. They want to be possessed. They want to have mental illness. Why do you want a mental illness? And then why do you treat it like a badge of honor? Like, people are putting this shit in their fucking profiles. Now, like, I'm all for, like, normalizing the idea that people have mental illness. That's fine. But mental illness is something that needs to be fucking treated. Like, these people are using it like a fucking excuse. Like, oh, well, I have borderline personality disorder, so you just have to deal with my shit. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, really? Like, deal with your shit. If you've got borderline, okay, fine. But deal with it. Treat it. Don't use it as an excuse for bad behavior. And that was the thing back then. The church would use possession as an excuse for bad behavior to mistreat undesirables, right? And then they would use exorcism as the tool to heal the possessed and remove the undesirables. And we're running into a very similar situation when we look at mental illness. And the thing is we have to look at, like when we look at spirituality, we have to take into consideration psychology. We cannot ignore psychology in spirituality. We can't. And so to answer the question, Maeve, do I think it's part of like related to education? I do believe that is something with education, but I think it's a much larger issue in education and not so much understanding what exorcism is or what possession is or understanding what mental illness is or, you know, how to properly deal with mental illness. It's not just that. That is most definitely a major part of it, but it's also education on how to be okay with who you are and not need something external to yourself to make you feel validated or feel that other people are going to validate you because you have 3 fucking letters in your profile. It's disgusting. I have ADHD. I'm not going to put that shit in my profile. I'm not going to put in my Instagram profile that I'm neurodivergent or that I have ADHD. It's none of your fucking business. And I'm sorry, that shit irritates the fuck out of me. When people put in their fucking profiles, OCD, ADHD, BPD, like, who gives a fuck? That's your shit. You are no more special to me now than you were 10 seconds ago before I knew that shit. In fact, you irritate me more now. And perhaps that's the desired reaction. But all of these things overlap. All of these things connect, right? Mental illness today is what exorcism would have been or possession would have been back in the 70s, right? I mean, if you think about it, after The Exorcist came out, every 15-year-old that, you know, got a movie ticket back then started acting possessed or weird. Like, it is not a coincidence that reports of possession skyrocketed after The Exorcist came out in the 70s. And they just kept going. It didn't stop. And then, you know, back in the early and mid 2000s, you know, we had, you know, a shit ton of exorcism movies come out. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, the Pope's Exorcist, you know, just a ridiculous amount of Exorcist movies. I think the most recent one was The Exorcist Believer, right? So and every time, and this can be correlated and this can be tracked, every time one of these movies come out, every time one of these movies hit big, even like a little bit, possession reports go up. You know, it kind of is what it is, right? So now, the next part that we're going to get into today, I think is going to be a pretty, maybe it might be a long episode. I'm not sure. So, the next part we're going to get into the Warren legacy. We're going to be talking about the Warrens, fear, fraud, and fantasy. Sid, good morning. Okay. Ed and Lorraine Warren popularized exorcism through horror fiction masquerading as case files. So we can look at things like The Conjuring, Annabelle, you know, the movies that were made, right? They worked with the Catholic Church to dramatize experiences and profit from fear. Their methods were rooted in superstition, not psychology, and have done more harm than good. For someone being undiagnosed, self-diagnosed, and looking for an official diagnosis makes a huge difference for self, at least to me. Living a life not understanding why I was not like everyone else. No, I completely get that. I completely get that. I don't think that there's a problem, self-diagnosing to a certain extent, so long as you extend out and try to get, an official diagnosis and then treatment. Right? So unfortunately for me, I haven't found a medication that actually, helps me focus. It dulls me out way too much, right? Greetings from Germany. It's 3 p.m. around here. Oh, hello, Anja. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Thank you very much for joining. So to break down and get further into kind of like the Warren legacy here, right? So first and foremost, Ed Lorraine Warren did not save souls. They sold them to Hollywood, and in doing so, they helped propagate one of the most damaging spiritual myths of the modern era. Okay? Yeah, exactly. I'm with you, Maeve. 100%. So, first and foremost, who are the Warrens, right? So, Ed, self-proclaimed demonologist, no theological or psychological training. Lorraine claimed to be a clairvoyant medium, right? Founded the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952. Claimed to have investigated over 10,000 hauntings and possessions. Unverifiable. There's no way to verify it. Zero formal education in psychology. Worked with Catholic exorcists, pushing cases that often fit mental illness profiles. Okay? So that's just a breakdown. And that's not even getting into the details. Hollywood meets the Vatican, right? Famous cases all turned into films. The Perron family, The Conjuring, teen depression, and family tension became demonic oppression. Lorraine saw visions. Ed declared, visions, thing in your head don't fucking matter, does it? Ed declared the house cursed. Filmmakers ignored contradictions from real family members. Right? Annabelle, allegedly haunted doll, later revealed to be an exaggeration of minor spiritual experiences. No independent documentation, yet they made millions from it. Right? Arn Chaney Johnson, The Devil Made Me Do It, claimed possession made him kill someone. Warren testimony was dismissed by court. Psychologists diagnosed mental health issues. Movie ignored that. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, when we look at Ed and Lorraine Warren, and then we have, content creators, on here. I'm not going to mention names because it's just that claim that Ed and Lorraine Warren are their astral mentors. And I find it absolutely sad the lengths that people will go just to believe something. The level of harm to others and harm to self that people are willing to go to just to believe something. It is a form of psychosis in itself, caused by religion. And here's the problem. The occult isn't 100% innocent of it either, right? 90% of the time we end up being the bad guys, right? We end up being the ones that cause this shit, right? I've had, people on the religious right sit here and tell me that I'm the reason why, murderers, rapists, and war exist. That's a big claim, but I have been told, that's that I am the reason for that shit, which is disgusting. But it's amazing how, religious obsession or spiritual obsession can lead to psychosis, can lead to a religious or spiritual psychosis, and the lengths that people will go to believe this shit. And the Warrens are just a perfect example of that, right? Hollywood perpetuates this shit and makes it, it's just horrible, right? It's sad to see people, just falling in line and eating this shit up. And here's the thing, I'm theistic. Like, I believe, in spiritual happenings. I believe in hauntings. I believe in aliens. I believe all of this shit. I do, Obviously, you to believe means that you don't know. And I think that that's something that we miss as human beings. You can believe something, but if you believe it because you do not know it. Because if you were to know something for a fact, you don't need to believe it. It just is, right? So, do I believe in this stuff? Yeah, I believe in it. Do I know it for a fact? Fuck no. Do I have my results from, ritual and things like that? Yeah, I do. But that's just for me. Doesn't mean that other people are going to get the same results that I get. But it's crazy to me that I see these extremes happening, right, all the time. It blows my mind how far people get into this shit, just to believe it. Like, I mean, I keep using this example, but I've had people come on the show on Apocrypha, and talk to me about their experiences and be like, yeah, I did this ritual and this black portal up in front of me, and Lucifer himself reached through and grabbed me by my throat, and I'm just like, right. What were you smoking at the time of this ritual? Because I want some. If we're able to identify, like, okay, in my mind's eye, this happened. Like, I've had things happen to me, but I also have documentation of this shit. Whether or not people believe it or not, well, that's completely different, right? So, first time I did a ritual with Lucifer, right? A day or two later, my eye started to bleed. Just one eye, not both eyes, just one. From the outside and the inside. The outside tear duct and the inside tear duct, just blood. And thing is I've got 3 pictures of when it first happened. And then there is a live somewhere in the history of lives that I've done when the show used to be called The Malice Experience. And I'm pretty sure Maeve was in the audience when this shit happened. I'm pretty sure you were there, Maeve. And I just kind of felt like a tingle on the side of my face, and I start going like this. And I go like this to the camera, and I'm just smearing blood across my face because my eye's bleeding. Live. Yeah, right? And go clean up. That's it. Happened for 3 days and then stopped. Now, the only reason I associate that to Lucifer is because the first thing I did is I jumped online and talked to a doctor online. And I said, my eye is bleeding and like, I don't know why. And he just kind of looks at me like, your eyes are bloodshot? Like you have blood underneath the, no, it's like, no, there's actual blood like dripping out of my face. And doctor's like, all right, I don't know why that would happen, but you need to go see like an actual doctor in person. Like, I can't help you with this. It's like, all right, cool. So I made an appointment with an eye doctor. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, my eye's bleeding, so go to an eye doctor. So I went to an eye doctor, they pop my shit open. Looked in there, it's like, well, I don't see any lesions. I don't see any broken blood vessels. Your eye looks fine. There's nothing to suggest, that there's any type of damage. So I had 2 different doctors, spoke to one and had one actually look at me. Now, I mean, did I do like in-depth research into this and like see multiple doctors like, hey, what's going on? No, no, I didn't. Right. So I mean, that's the thing, right? There might be a logical explanation of why that shit happened, but I didn't get one. So the only thing that I could do was associate that with the ritual that I did with Lucifer a day before or 2 days before that happened. Now, did I go fucking full psycho with that shit? No. It's the balance, people. Balance. It's so important. I had my own experiences, nothing sensational. I mean, I don't know. Like, I kind of like talking about it sometimes because it's like, I think the first and only like physical manifestation, or like what I would claim to be a physical manifestation of ritual work with Lucifer, to ever happen to me. So yeah, I kind of like talking about it. I mean, it's gonna get old, right? I mean, I'm gonna be like 80 years old, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I did this ritual with Lucifer and made my eyes bleed, right? You know, no fucking teeth and shit, just bragging on about the one thing that fucking happened. So, you know, but that's what we do, right? The older we get, the further back we reach for glory. Anyway, let us continue with the Warrens. Yes? Okay. So, why is this dangerous, right? So we went over kind of like, you know, the Perron family, Annabelle, Arnie, Cheyenne, Johnson. So why is this stuff dangerous? Warrens made spiritual illness into Hollywood spectacle, not sacred healing. Right? Reinforced the idea that demonic possession is common, contagious, and always require Catholic intervention. Encouraged people to fear their own thoughts. Gave rise to countless fake demonologists and YouTube exorcists. I mean, I'm sorry, and I've seen it, and I've gone to war with one of these people, and the delusion is fucking real, right? Like, I mean, I have never had a back and forth with somebody more delusional in my life, right? But everybody and their fucking grandmother, you know, watches those movies, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a demonologist," even though they don't know shit about demons. They couldn't tell you the first thing, like off the top of their head, they couldn't tell you the first thing about probably some of the most popular ones, Belial, Asmodeus, right? I mean, you'd probably get them to talk about Lucifer without a problem. Lilith, maybe, right? But you go through the Goetia, Bune, ask them about Bune, right? Martyrbus, ask them about Martyrbus, right? They're not going to know shit. They're not going to know anything about him because they haven't actually read the Goetia. They haven't actually done any research. They just slapped a title, and that was it. It's like demonology. Demonology is the thing. Are there demonologists? Yes, there are demonologists. But here's also another thing, right? This person that I went to war with, YouTube video war, and if you're wondering who the fuck it is, just go through the previous lives, and it's not difficult to figure it out. I remember in one of her videos, she said that demons don't mess with me because I'm a demonologist. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, you do know that being a demonologist just means that you studied demonology. You studied demons. That's it. It doesn't give you any inherent or particular power over a demon. It just means you understand them. You understand the hierarchy. You understand the positioning. Like, you understand, the hierarchy in different cultures. Like, that's what being a demonologist is. I would never claim to be a demonologist because, I mean, I know enough to hurt myself, right? I'm not well versed in that. Ask them about nothing, right? Shit, dude, I know nothing. But, I mean, it's just, it's pathetic because it's pathetic to see people not put any work in and then give themselves a title like that. It's the same thing with people that call them, I'm the high priest, I'm the high priestess, I'm the magus, it's like, and what authority gave that to you? Like really? Like what authority gave that to you? It I'm sorry, but like more so like when it's a solitary practitioner does that shit. Oh, that's so irritating. Because like to be a high priestess or be a high priest, right, requires a coven, requires a group of people that collectively have appointed you with such a title, and that you are a point of reverence and education and understanding and example for people to follow. I'm sorry, if you are a solitary practitioner, you're not a fucking high priest and you're not a fucking high priestess. Get over yourself. All right? Just end of fucking story. Okay? So they told us demons were everywhere so they could be the only ones who knew how to get rid of them. I am a worship master, authority of my Grand Lodge. There you go. Like, I mean, you have an authority, but you have an authority, though. You know, that gave you a title, right? It's not a bad thing to have a title. And when I say authority, like I'm not talking about like some type of governmental authority. Like when we think of an authority, like we think of, some mass group or organization that's giving us titles and shit. And I'm not talking about like, if we look at like being a priest in the church, right? I'm not talking like at that level. But like even if you have a small coven, like, 5, 6 people, and the other 4 or 5 people say, hey, I think you should be the high priest. I think you should be the high priestess. That's enough for me. That's enough from that. That's enough of an authority. Like if you got 6 people saying, hey, you're the guy. You're the person, then okay, cool. But we have people that in their own descriptions, solitary practitioner, high priest, high priestess. It doesn't work that way, man. It doesn't. All right, so now for the fun part. Lucifer and Beelzebub as exorcists, not tormentors. Right? So Lucifer, bringer of awareness, cuts through illusions, exposes false beliefs and implants, reclaims sovereignty from intrusive spirits. Again, I'm reiterating the point here. I do believe that sometimes exorcism is necessary. I don't inherently believe that possession is demonic. I believe that it can be, but I don't believe that it inherently is. Because if we look at the demonic as the ancient Greek looked at the demonic, the daemon, we understand that these are guiding spirits that aren't inherently good or evil, but can be greatly mischievous. We understand this, we know this through history. So, can a demon or daemon possess a human being, and can they wreak a little bit of havoc? Yes. Most of the time, we're talking about spiritual possession, a spirit latching or attaching itself, not inherently or directly possessing and taking over the body, but influencing the body. Right? Now, for me, with exorcism rites, I definitely work with Lucifer and Beelzebub. And the reason why I look at Lucifer for exorcism is, I'm sorry, I do think that even though he's not a goetic spirit, I still fully believe that all of the demonic fall under that motherfucker. And like when you want, a demon to listen, when you want a spirit to listen, Lucifer makes motherfuckers listen. Right? And Beelzebub, let's just be honest, even Jesus used Beelzebub, right? So if you believe in that shit, if you go Abrahamic with that, even Jesus used Beelzebub. So the Christian extreme demonize anything that threatens. It does 100%, 100%. Right? So Beelzebub, Lord of Decay, consumes stagnation and parasitic attachments, clears energetic filth like infestation or psychic rot, brings finality to exorcism. So you start with Lucifer. You identify what it is that you're working with, right? Or what you're trying to get out. You cut through the bullshit, right? You go through the false belief and the implants and things of that nature. You reestablish the person's spiritual sovereignty, psychological sovereignty over themselves. Beelzebub then burns that shit out like cancer. The church said they possess, we say they purge. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a spiritual purging, like when we do this, right? So, an infernal banishment. As we do in the week, I give you guys a ritual that you can work with if you feel like you need something like this, okay? All right, so infernal banishment, okay? Black or red candle, Lucifer and Beelzebub sigils, mirror or reflective surface. I would say make a black mirror if you can. Incense or burning herb. That's optional, but I would definitely go with it. Make sure the senses are engaged. Okay? Face the mirror, light the candle, say aloud, Lucifer, bearer of light, illuminate what does not belong. Hold your gaze, breathe, ask, is there something within me that is not mine? Now, this is a personal exorcism. Let impressions, sensations, and images rise. Hold Beelzebub's sigil. Say aloud, Beelzebub, devourer of rot, consume what no longer serves. Visualize decay burning away in the black flame. Close with the affirmation, I am sovereign, I am whole. No God, spirit, or thought form may feed on what is mine. Make one, man. Just get like a fucking picture frame off of Amazon, spray paint one side of it, high polish the other side, boom, done. I made one last night. Matte black paint works the best. Okay. That is a super simple kind of like personalized exorcism. Now, it's not to say that you're necessarily exorcising a spirit from yourself, but we're not always just exorcising spirits, are we? Maybe we want to exercise a bad habit. Maybe we want to exercise a bad idea, a bad thought form, right? Something that we don't want attached to us. You know, we want to move away from that. We want to separate from that. We want, you know, to be able to grow, right? Another thing I need back here, reciting that in my head has impacts. It does, doesn't it? I mean, it's powerful shit. It's powerful shit. You know, and I think the thing is like we all have or have allowed ideals or ideologies to, you know, come in our head. Now, if you guys are wondering, if you guys want an actual sigil for exorcism, so I made one yesterday. So this one is for a jar exorcism, right? So this is for like a third person, right? So if you're going to perform an exorcism on another person from a distance, I believe in jar exorcism. Jar exorcisms is literally just putting whatever it is you're detaching from another person into the jar in front of you. Now, on the jar, the sigil that goes on it, if I can find it, there we go, is going to be, one second, let me find this and I'll show it to you guys. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, so if for some reason it dropped for a second, sorry about that. Here we go. Found it. Ooh, that is massive. That is a really big image. So this is the sigil that I made yesterday. for this exorcism that we'll be doing for a client. It's right up here. So that right there is the sigil that I made. So the idea of the sigil, what it is used for, is it's put on either side of a jar. And usually with the jar, what you're going to want to do is distilled water, herbs, for specifically for control, power, things of that nature. Let them sit and stagnant in the water. That particular sigil makes sure that whatever goes into the jar does not come out. That's what that's for. Now there is a caveat with this particular sigil. This particular sigil also allows, and this is if you're experienced, this allows you to use whatever it is that you captured into the jar. It allows you to use its ability, use its power, use its focus in future rituals without letting it back out. Some people might, akin that to, I don't know, spiritual cruelty. I don't know, but it does allow for that to happen. So yeah, that's a thing. So if you're looking for a sigil to use, you can go back and watch the pre-recorded, and then you can take that and make it a little bit bigger. And if you want to draw that out and use that yourself, you can. So that's the sigil right there. So yeah, that's it. Anywho, that I think is going to conclude, right? Today's episode of Satan and Coffee, everyone. I do hope you found it educational. I mean, there's a little bit of a rant off, like there always is, but ADHD. I hope you all had your coffee and enjoyed it. I know I did. I love me a good hazelnut blend. And with that, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. You guys are fucking amazing. And as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.